Next thing we're going to talk about is the one of the isms that we can learn a lot from. Historically, a lot of different writings, a lot of different religious texts have been based on this, so that's why I'm covering it. But again, just get the underlying premises. And the reason why I go over this is you'll see why the Tao is actually it's often referred to as the way of nature. So if we're talking about nature as the answer, it would be helpful to know the ways of nature then, right? Now maybe it's not as to the point as natural law, but it often has a lot of learnings from it that we can learn from a human perspective, and I think that's always good. That's always good, is to get a different perspective on the world. And I'd say this one is really worth knowing. Okay, this is something that even has its roots in medicine and different philosophies alike. Okay, so it says the Tao is to escape the quote social, political, and cultural traps. So we already noticed that there's a lot of boundaries in people's way. Okay, and that's of life, which one must escape by. Okay, and then there's four things. It says one is rejecting formal knowledge and learning. Okay, and so that is escaping cognitive dissonance essentially, which is this idea that you hold on to one idea and you are unable to change your mind given conflicting information. You are too stuck on one belief system. You are stuck on statism, and there's no other way out of it. That's sort of what number one is talking about, rejecting formal knowledge and learning, because it allows you to innovate. It allows you to challenge your current knowledge with interjecting knowledge that is new, that could help you actually learn more. And number two is relying on the senses and instincts. You got to rely on your gut feelings. You got to rely on what nature has essentially given you. Okay, it's not just about science and having all the statistics. Again, it's about feeling and listening and knowing and using your consciousness. Okay, not just all about feeling either, though. There's a lot of people that just run by feelings only. There's also a lot of gut feelings. There's a lot of understanding that is involved with the instincts, where if you can train the mind, you can train the heart as well. There's different aspects to that, because you see how overbearing one organ may be, one way of belief system may be. How if you feel like you have to change the world at all, it must be through government. Or how if you have to think one thing at all, it must be through science. Okay, so we have these tendencies to overbear certain things. So to keep in mind the holistic point of view. Number three is discovering the nature and rhythm of the universe, as we've been describing the natural law and the rhythms. Like, this is perfectly describing it, which is why the Tao is really important. You even see up here the yin yang symbol. So this is really important to understand for the principle of polarity, which is in natural law, which is why it holds to be true, and many people have been talking about it. Okay, so discovering the nature and rhythm of the universe. What are the patterns that we see? What do we see coming up over and over again, as we've detailed in history? What do we see as something that we need to notice? The messages that are being given to us. The as above, so below philosophies. Then number four we see is ignoring political and social laws. Okay, so one must escape by ignoring political and social laws. So ignoring the man's law, which is actually amazing that they say this, but this is true. The Tao is often about being present, and we're going to talk more about that. I have more stuff on this, but understand number four is kind of going along what we're talking about. Political laws. What would that be? That would be essentially most of everything from government, because the Tao is the way of nature. And that's why people have read it, they've learned a lot, and for some, they've applied much of it to their life, and they've seen the differences. So you got to find ways to apply this to your own life, of course, for your own understandings. I think the best way is always just understanding cause and effect, making a diagnosis, understanding how do you change that. Maybe changing your health, doing different habits that are in alignment with nature. That's the point here. So learning more about this, you see Taoism or Taoism is the way or the path. Okay, so if you had somebody who gave you the path, you can walk along the path. Only you are going to walk along that path. However, somebody could help guide you the way there. as a coach, right? As somebody who is not necessarily a leader, but somebody who can guide you so you can lead yourself if you are confused on leading yourself. A lot of people don't know who they are in this world, and that's perfectly fine, especially a lot of people who are still growing up, and that's perfectly natural. It's like finding yourself, finding who you are, finding your belief systems, finding how to talk to girls and all this. It's a practice, it's a learning, it's something that people are like, well, I need some advice on this, I need some advice on that, because it helps them to seek outside perspectives other than just simply from their own. And so that's what human beings can be there for, not necessarily just textbooks and quote unquote the science, right? So it says a belief system based on the Tao, okay? A belief system that seeks harmony with nature and inner feelings, exactly what we've been talking about, right? Is this self-transformation process and seeking alignment with nature. Then it says, quote, the only human actions that make sense are those which are in accord with the flow of nature. So this is exactly what we're talking about. What is in alignment with nature? Then we have here denounced violence as reflecting the ultimate ignorance of the way of nature. So denounced violence, involuntary violence, violence that is unnecessary, essentially, that is just done on one person to another, is reflecting the ultimate ignorance, which ignorance, as we know, is this really bad force that is often at the roots of most of evils that we see within our society. And you can say it's the government itself, but again, it's the beliefs behind it, the ideas behind it. Like, I can't just say it's government. Now that with this information of looking at the whole picture, I can say it's statism. Okay, so it's not being ignorant of what's actually in control of things. It's not just that, or not just this, it's actually this. It's actually these ideas behind it, and there's always deeper roots to which you can get, so which is why you always have to be open to the mind and open to the premises here. And it says opposed Confucianism, which I don't know, but I put this picture up because obviously I'm getting these pictures from different places, because it says the way of nature, it says the flow of nature, it says harmony with nature. I mean, this is apparent. This is why we can learn from it. I actually have the book with me, the Tao, the Ching, and it has a lot of insightful quotes in it, a lot of insightful things about all different topics within society. It teaches you to be a lot more present, a lot more thankful, a lot more open-minded, which is never going to hurt when it comes to consciousness. It's never going to hurt for opening your mind and for seeking new information. However, you don't consume yourself in it, because people have always added isms to everything. And this is simply just a book talking about the way. That's it. It speaks for itself, frankly. It says it teaches the way, how to work with nature's forces and not fight against them, to achieve harmony in oneself and with nature. The Tao is the goal, path, and journey all in one. Okay, so it's not, you want to say nature is the answer. It's essentially a goal, it's a path, it's a journey, it's a forever progression. It's not necessarily the final answer, but it's the answer. It's the way to start looking. It's the way to view the world, in a different view. So that's why they even say here, the Taoist view, okay? So what's really interesting here, though, is it says the government shouldn't have power over people because it breaks the Wu Wei. Now, the Wu Wei is the method of following the Tao, and it's translated as non-doing. So it means that everything humans do should follow the natural course of nature. We should not try to change it. It means to go with the flow, do nothing, and everything gets done. Yeah, but here's the problem, right? It doesn't mean just do nothing, because there's a lot of people who are doing something. So unless those people don't do anything, then we'll be fine. I think a lot of people sometimes don't interpret this correctly. By doing nothing, it's by just living content, essentially, living amongst themselves, and meditating, as they say, is this concept of emptiness and nothingness, the Wu part here. And it says, by achieving emptiness, we can observe nature and understand ourselves. We have to empty our mind of any impulses, aspirations, wishes, or desires that are against the Tao. So, it's a little strict on boundaries here, but I think it's very accurate. from my point of view. Understanding the Tao is very accurate as a depiction of nature, and I think everybody should know about it, shall they want to understand more of nature in this lens of greater knowledge and greater wisdom. So to do nothing, what does that mean? Does that mean to sit back and don't do anything? It's impossible. There's always going to be a human footprint. But the point is not to actively go out of your way and seek to rule over other people. I see it as that. If it especially is not natural, it's not with nature's forces. Okay, so then there's also the T here, and that says the power of a thing is its virtue, identity, and integrity. And says by understanding ourselves we can be happy and reach Tao, which we talked about, and that the T is expressed through humility and meekness. There's a lot you can probably go based upon this, but I want you to just get the premises, like I said. It's this fact that we should be present, the fact that we should be content. And that is the ultimate happiness. It is not in materialism or technology. There's not a mention of that in the book. If anything, they'll talk about abundance and how dangerous that is, and that's no surprise to anybody who really reflects upon the world here. It's about this mentality, it's about this spiritual self that we have, okay? So then it says, because everything has life, Tao believes that it is wrong to fight each other in wars. Of course it's wrong to fight each other in wars. So this, again, is very aligned to be correct. And then it says, man is unhappy when he has to follow rules and laws, which we've seen. Because man is this natural wild animal, as we've discussed before. So, is this a matter of embracing what we have in nature, or are we going to bend the will, again, to what we want it to be, even though it's not natural, and it's not of nature, it's not of the Tao? That is the question here, and that's what leads us this way toward the ultimate contentness, toward the ultimate solution and sustainable path. It is not in government, and the Tao represents this, and nature represents it. So the very way of nature represents it, the very laws of nature represent it. How much more evidence do you need? The cycles of government itself represent it. I'm hoping you're getting the understanding of this by now, but it says, quote, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. So it's saying to let the truth, which is, right? The truth is, that simply is what the truth is. It just is to just let it be. And if you want to be the change you want to be, you be it. See, it's a very, very present mentality. It's a very self-focused mentality. Like, if you want to be present, you be present. If you want to live content, you live content. It says, let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Exactly. But does that mean government is a natural force? Does government let things go naturally? No, because they always seek to rule over it. They seek to change it. They say, okay, global warming is happening. We need to, do this, but it's man-made. And I'm not going to go among that debate, but I mean, obviously, as I'm human, so I could talk about it too. But the point is that really important at the end of the day when we realize we have some simple oppositions to nature that make a really big impact, like believing in government. When we have simple things like just eating well, that can actually prevent most of all disease. And then we see that just simply going with the flow of nature in circumstances like that can make such a really big impact. And people want to resist this natural change that happens, that is reality, and that only creates sorrow. And it starts to bend the will of nature. Again, it's going against the Tao because you're not going with the way of nature. And so this is a quote by Lao Tzu, who is somebody who I believe revisioned or wrote the Tao. I'm not sure. I think it's a more mysterious book behind the actual writers and beliefs behind it and so forth, but I know he gets his name on top of it often, so that also is what it says on the book that I have here. Now, another way, again, to look at this word Tao, it says the Chinese word Tao is usually translated as, quote, way, path, or principle. I've been saying those words this whole time now. It says, although this usage takes its meaning, however, from reality or nature, which the word Tao can also mean. So there you have it. If you just replace the word Tao with nature, it's essentially saying nature's the answer in almost every context that it says follow the Tao, the Tao is the way, and so forth. And it says which the word Tao can also mean. So the proper path in life, says Taoism, is one that works in harmony with reality, one that works in harmony with nature, the essence of the natural universe. So if you work with reality, what is real, what is essential, the principles, the truths, then you're working with the natural universe. This is really accurate. So this is another way to see it, and it's important we get all these different perspectives from all the photos that I have here. It says the Tao is the force that exists before all things. It's the way, or the way of nature, the way to understand how to achieve balance. As we've talked about, there's a lot of different ways to see things, and we need to achieve balance within our personal lives. It says, quote, by giving birth to one, this must be from it, Tao gave the world a mechanism for balance. The birth of two means the birth of opposites. The birth of three refers to heaven, earth, and humanity. Thus, creation can be related back to the Tao, back to nature. The Tao, nature, is not God and is not worshipped. Nothing, especially material, because Tao is supposed to be this book, this guide, is not to be worshipped. It's just a guide. It's meant there to be a way, a showing, a representation of this greater truth, okay? So it's saying the Tao specifically in the context of the book here is not God and is not worshipped. And that is something that sparks to my brain and says, hey, that's something the whole world can agree upon. It's a universal concept, especially since we're dealing with the matter of nature, which is a universal concept. And we're dealing with truth, which are a universal concept. So I don't see why people can't understand these things, or at least want to understand more of it, just to get a greater outlook on this society. It's like, do you do your reading? Do you do this because it helps expand your brain? We're doing some exercises here, and the mental work is necessary, shall we want to change the world as we've seen. This photo then says Taoism is the way or the path, an energy that flows throughout the world, an energy which is really symbolic to what Tesla said, how everything is energy, vibration, and frequency. And then it says teachings focus on humanity's relationship with nature. So again, a different slide from a different picture, a whole different thing, and it's saying that it's our relationship with nature. So again, coincidence or not, it's simply what is it's representing. And I think if everyone were to understand nature, we'd learn so much that we see is so similar, being that we are looking all in the more same direction. We're looking for unification, we're looking for truth, we're looking for what's right, what's meant to be, and we're not looking for somebody's belief system, we're not looking through the lens of somebody else, we're not putting on a virtual reality headset and saying this is the reality we're in. We're saying, okay, well, we need to really open our eyes to the reality we are to be in, and that is the reality we are to embrace. And then we have another slide from one of those presentations, and it says the Tao Te Ching is one of the most famous texts in world history, traditionally attributed to Lao Tzu, right? So he's the one that gets most of the credit there. And it says, holds that Tao is the nature of things, and that we are all called to live in harmony with the Tao, the way things are, essentially. The way things are, so with reality. And then it says, excerpt, the Tao is infinite, eternal. Why is it eternal? It was never born, thus it can never die. Why is it infinite? It has no desires for itself, thus it is present for all beings. And I say exactly the same thing for nature. It is infinite, it's eternal. It was never born, thus it can never die. This mission, it's always been existent in different forms. I said there were many people before me. I've said this before. And I said how no matter what happens to me, this is something that people can agree to. And now I have all this stuff out there. People can move on with through the generations regardless of what anybody says, regardless of the state of the world, regardless if people even take action on anything. Like on a mass scale, you can use it still within your own life, because you'd say, okay, well, what is the answer? Well, it's got to be something that's in alignment with nature. And it's just that simple. It's just that simple. It's just that simple, folks. So, I mean, natural law is sort of this more complexified way behind it. And so is the Tao. If you want to look at the way it's written, it's just fancy poetry. It's fancy ways of displaying this truth. And I think it's something that should be treasured upon for its creativity as something that we see. And people can also find other ways of promoting this natural law, because that's what this book is essentially doing. It says, why is it infinite? It has no desires for itself. Thus it's present for all beings. Nature is present for all beings. Heck, it's supposed to feed us. It is the laws that rule over all of us at all times. And it says, Taoism, the way of harmony with nature, a philosophy profound and paradoxical, a way of life playful and practical. So two polarities. So it says, so keep that in mind when people maybe take from the Tao and just say, okay, well, I should do nothing, just let things be. No, there's the paradox to that as well, that by also not doing anything, you should also do something. Great. So perhaps I'd say, nature is the answer, is the perfect description for this. We're creating a big impact to do little impact, but to create much impact. Like there's an irony to it. We're creating a system to take down a system, and it really works in alignment with this paradox, I would say. Shall you look at it in depth? And it says it on the slide too. Nature knows best, essentially. We want to be God, and essentially what we're saying is, nope, let's not be God. Let's understand our limitations as human beings, which we don't have limitations. The paradox here is amazing. But we need to learn that this paradox is existent. Shall we want to learn even more? I feel like, I say this a lot, but the irony is what helps teach us. I say nature is ironic. It's the same thing when we're talking about with paradox here. And you notice it says the way of harmony with nature. When we talk about balance, I often say the word harmony, because if you had one musical element just dominating the whole song, it would be out of harmony. So bringing that into harmony is bringing in those other aspects, and then at the right tune. That's how you make music. It's creating a complex mixture of things, to which a balance also is, right? A mixture of things. So you can look at things like the balance or harmony point of view. You could look at things from a Tao or a nature point of view or a natural law point of view. A lot of this could be resorting to the same thing, just like how we like to have fancy words for blood sugar, for example, just as a simple example. In medicine, we want to say it's glycemic index, we want to say it's blood sugar, we want to say it's insulin, we want to say it's blood spikes, so we want to say all these different fancy terms for it. Carbohydrate load, who knows? But that's what we want to do, and sometimes it is basing upon the principle that all those of which it stands. Again, understand that knowledge is one thing and understanding is another. Understanding is getting this understanding of the knowledge. It's creating the common sense out of what has been existent knowledge. See, and people want to say, okay, well, the opposite of thoughts would be words, the opposite of words are actions and so forth. But you see here that it's all connected, and we can break it down. We can be very specific as to what does it really mean? How does it really come about? This is a quote also from the Tao. It says, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. We've talked about words, we've talked about habits, we've talked about actions, we've talked about desires, we've talked a lot about character too, essentially, which a lot of this is, and how it becomes your personality, how it becomes your manifested reality, and that's what then becomes your destiny. It becomes what you attract. It's your law of attraction. What are you bringing to yourself through your words, through your actions, through your habits, through your character? It's what you're attracting from all those things, and all of them contribute to one another, and all of them build up this energy that we can observe. For even this slide calls Tao, it calls it the law of nature. It says practicing Tao is being in accord with reality. It says events fall into harmony if left alone. Everything grows and operates independently on its own, but in harmony with all. A follower of the Tao is someone who intuitively understands the energy and balance in nature and works intelligently with spontaneous natural phenomena. Okay, and exactly. So here's the thing, right? The problem with government is it's something that it still came about, and it's something that a lot of people have learned to live with naturally, even though it's clearly against the laws of nature. So we have some things to observe with that when we are applying it to the Tao. And people have to keep that in mind. It says the great way is easy, yet people prefer the side paths. Be aware when things are out of balance. Stay centered within the Tao. Stay centered. So your mindset matters here. Your mindset matters for all the change in the world to happen. Okay, so this is something that is really key then to having our sustainability through time. Once we are closer to nature and we are able to live with the laws of nature where there is more imbalances and we're able to see it better and so forth. But when you have this overarching government, it does make things a little difficult. I like, though, this last part says, with a follower of the Tao, someone who intuitively understands this energy and balance in nature, because there is this natural balance in nature, as I've been talking about, how it doesn't matter whether we succeed or not, nature will have its way likely. The scientists of the world want to think that they can keep their control, especially through different methodologies, but nature will have its way ultimately all the time, because it's just too powerful of a force. It's too overriding of a force. And the problem for me is that it's still going to cause a lot of problems, especially with governments still in direct opposition or war with nature. But there's going to be a lot of deaths involved. There's going to be a lot of harmful turns to the cycle that I've depicted in my writings and so forth, because I understood that, yes, even if I were to sit back, everything will fall together on its own, but that's the point. It would fall together, and I don't want people to fall. I don't want death happening. By this movement, again, is to prevent as much harm. It's to reduce the harm done. Because no matter what, things would fall on its head, with the imbalances and the denaturing and so forth, given the power systems that don't perfectly plan around their agenda. But either way, I'm thinking about the average person. I'm thinking about the masses of people. That's the mindset I'm taking here. Okay, I could take it either way. I could take it on their mindset or our mindset behalf. And I'm saying that, things will work out in nature no matter what, oftentimes. But that doesn't mean there's going to not be mass casualties. I mean, we've created the system that already creates mass casualties, so we can take it down. And when we see that most of the casualties that are being made anyways is being done through man, then you have to question, how much are we in alignment with nature, if anything, which we often are to always some degree, and we always seek it again, intuitively, to some degree. So if we understand this intuitive balance and energy as it says, we can work intelligently, which I'm not saying that Nita is an intelligent-based movement, but we're trying to work with the intelligence of the universe, the natural law. So we're trying to base this off of the pure intelligence of the universe. So we're going to try to work with this natural phenomena by working in alignment with it, realizing that the whole point of this is to ultimately find our true selves and to live with the truth. And that is ultimately the ultimate of the ultimate. It's not to say, okay, well, we all need to be on natural medicine or whatever. It's not for any agenda like that. It's just to live as we ought to do, and to live in balance and harmony with nature, and to frankly do nothing. Which a lot of it comes down to, as I've also depicted in other writings. So it's a very ironic situation, but it's one that you must understand that the cycle will still come into balance, but there still can be mass preventative casualties. We can still prevent so many casualties by moving in the right direction, if you choose to take that direction. And that direction is represented here by the Tao. So shall we be that intuitive person who understands the energy and the balance, who understands all these polarities, someone who understands natural law essentially? We can work intelligently because we're working with the intelligent. That is natural. So then it says here on this slide, it says in summary, it has the Tao, which is the source of existence, or the root of all being, seen and unseen. And then it says, is achieved through, so the Tao is achieved through meditation and self-reflection and solitude, or acting thoughtfully, not impulsively. And that leads to the Wu Wai, which is the non-action, which is acting in harmony with nature and living in peace, simplicity, and tranquility. So notice, the Tao is achieved through acting thoughtfully with our consciousness, with our nature, as we've been talking about, is that we need to use that to escape the condition that we're in. We need to use our we need to use our nature before we're denatured, or before we're not even able to act or think for ourselves at all, before it becomes harder to talk to one another at all. And we need to realize that situation, because technology is a force that we have to consider now. Okay, so it says acting thoughtfully, not impulsively, not just jumping the gun, not just going with this this very instant gratification society as we've been programmed into oftentimes. Okay, and then it says meditation and reflection in solitude. So we've seen with Tesla what he said about. Tesla talked about being, with yourself, being as the most creative, being reflective. We're going to see from the Buddha, he's going to talk a lot about meditation, being reflective, just being present. I'm not going to promote anyone here meditates. I'm just saying that reflection in all its forms and just taking a step back for once is a good thing. Okay? I'm not one to say this is new age or whatever either. Like that, these are all dangerous isms, dangerous movements that aren't, I believe, as sustainable. They're not in alignment with nature, essentially. And people think it is. They redefine the law of attraction as something that it's not. And that causes people like Mark Passio to clarify and say, that's not what it is. We're talking about the objective truth. Careful with what you're talking about, because you're actually twisting the truth by changing what the law of attraction actually means. Okay, so now through changing our thoughts, which we are changing our belief systems, we're not believing in government. Okay, now we're more in alignment with the Tao, the way, as we know, which already goes directly against government, which makes sense since natural law is directly against government. And that we're also reflecting on ourselves, we're reflecting on our current environment to make sure we're not projecting upon others what we want within our personal lives, so we can make sure that we're moving with the objective truth and not to one that is purely personal. Even though I'm sure you have some personal aspirations which could still be achieved through following the Tao, it's just don't push it on the rest of society, and try to be respectful of other people's goals as well. You have to keep that in mind. Okay, every health coach has to do the same thing, which is why being a health coach and having that mentality of yourself would be a very healing model for the whole world. Okay, so then it says, once that's achieved, so once we achieve the way of nature, going more with nature is the answer, we have this non-action stage, where I say it's the step 6 part, where we're keeping the sustainability. It's the willpower creation stage, I say. So we are creating, we're just doing our thing, and although it says non-action, we're following our destiny. So we're going to do what we feel is best, right? We're going to become self-sustainable because we feel like we need to do that. If we feel like we need to build roads, we'll build roads. It's not that hard to flatten the surface and do that. So we're still going to obviously take actions. We need to eat, we need to do that. There's things that we do it, but we do it with the thought as we got here. We do it with reflection as we got here. So we understand that there are natural things, there's natural actions, and there's not manipulated actions, and there's not unconscious actions. We're aware of what we're doing within our daily life. We see the cause and effect. We're applying natural law. Okay, and we are more obligated to use it because we don't have boundaries in our way like government, because we've achieved getting rid of that out of our belief system at this point. I'm saying by the point that we've gotten that out of our brain, we're more toward the non-action period where we can just sustain the message, which is that nature is the answer. Maybe the Tao you want to include in there just for more reference, more knowledge, in case you want to keep it for generations. It's acting in harmony with nature, it says, the non-action part. So we're just acting in harmony with nature. We're still eating, we're still reproducing, we're doing all the things that we ought to do. We're just not doing too much, because then it says here, living at peace, simplicity, and tranquility. Simplicity. Can we be content, like I've been saying? Can we not be at war with one another and say this is the truth or that's the truth? And can we just accept the truth that is here right now, all the time, everywhere, at all times? And then tranquility, which frankly, if you were to be out in nature, you realize how tranquil it is, how healing it is within itself. Why can't we reflect that? Why do we have to push our idealism, our mindsets upon the world of nature and turn it into something more destructive than it actually is? Now people are scared of the dark when it could actually be a beautiful thing to some. Some people are scared of this or that because the movies have programmed them to do that. And it's created this association where it's hard for them to reflect on solitude. They're afraid to even be in solitude. And if they are in solitude, they're super depressed and they are not reflecting. They feel like they always have to do something, that they can't meditate or they can't do breathing exercises. They're always taking fast breaths, and that contributes to a worse cardiovascular system. And they're not acting thoughtfully because they don't know anything about cause and effect, and the schools didn't teach them anything about that. And their parents didn't help them understand right from wrong because they didn't understand objective morality. And the impulsively, they're always going toward new things because the phones are impulsively interacting with them, so they expect things to just come to them. They don't want to work. This is some dangerous ideologies that are going through the brains of some people, I'd say, in the coming generations. So we need to be aware of that. Shall we want to change the world for the better in alignment with nature, which is using, again, what we have in nature. So it makes sense that if we want to be in the harmony with nature, we go toward nature, which is the way, the Tao, and we use what we have in nature to be in harmony with nature. It's just that simple. We do what we are to do as nature, to be in harmony with nature, to be in the way, for the way of nature. Okay? And instead of replacing it, instead of manipulating it, instead of ignoring it, instead of throwing excuses, because that's what we've done. And these truths and these polarities, I hope it's not confusing you. I'm hoping that you use this as a way to expand your mind more and see that there's these different perspectives on lives that actually still hold true despite being different perspectives, okay? And they all hold true in different ways because they've been said, because they have reasoning and understanding behind them. And that's the point, is because they have human consciousness behind them. The consciousness is that awareness of the different aspects and degrees that this universe contains, okay? You have here, quote, "There is no human nature as such. There are just human natures. Each individual is a universe unto him or herself. You cannot make any general rules. All general rules go false." Sounds familiar, right? Sounds like man's law. It says this has to be remembered deeply, because on this path there is every possibility that you may start following rules, and once you become the victim of rules, you will never come to know who you are. And this is really key to understanding the governments that be, is because they have rules, they have guidelines that aren't guiding you, but are forcing you to obey. And you feel like you cannot break the rules, otherwise consequences. And certain simple things too. You can't go there. It's this property of the government, and you can't take photos of this building, even though they are tracking you all the time and always taking photos of you. Does this make any sense? Doesn't make any sense. So you are the victim, and then some people embrace the victim. They're like, I'm a victim, I need help. And that's not good either, right? Because then we have a left brain and right brain mentality differential that is imbalanced. So it says that you will never come to know who you are if you are a victim of these rules. These general rules that go false because they're not eternal, they're not universal, and they're not innate. They're not natural law. So understand that it's making it hard to see who you are as a human being yourself, which is why living amongst nature and realizing that nature is the answer is actually going to help you find yourself more. But it still depends on you and the boundaries that you have within your life. And are they in your way? Do you have enough support mechanisms within your life? Do you have enough nutrition in your life? I mean, because that even influences your brain and allows you to think clearly and more deeply, perhaps, because you're still more in line with nature. Okay, so understand that when you are more distracted, it's like having a cloudy mind. Think cloudy, right? Foggy. You can't see what's going on. Okay, so that's what's happening in your brain when you have all these things in its way, all these obligations, all these things that you have on your mind. Your mind isn't clear. It's not in a meditative state. It's not in a aware state. It is being consumed by other things. And you have to question sometimes, who is consuming you? What is consuming you? What's taking that life force out of you? What could you be doing for your great human potential otherwise that is being restricted or held back from you? These are the questions that also represent your potential and show your limitations that you are essentially putting on yourself. So realize that power that you have, the willpower, the consciousness, again, all those things that make you human. And that was a quote by Ching, okay, Tzu, if I'm saying that correct. But you see here that this is the Tao Chi, which is representative for the yin yang, and this is a common logo for the Tao, so it makes sense. You have here just the different prototypes, archetypes, whatever you want to call it, of what each means. Okay, and one you may see is like the sun, another the moon, one woman, one male, left brain, right brain, dominant, passive, you can make a lot of different relationships with this. Mark Passio often uses this for reference in natural law seminars as well. And even this picture here, talking about the Taoism, says here, quote, regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. Again, putting yourself in somebody else's footprints. Being compassionate, understanding their condition and how that's still among your environment. So if somebody feels bad, are you going to have any empathy toward them feeling bad? Or are you just going to just ignore it or laugh it off? Because you have to realize that they are still somebody who could be very close to you. They can be somebody who can impact your life if you help them out, or if you understood why they did what they did. Then you'd understand, why they feel the way that they feel. So understand that everything here is this balance, and everybody is moreover one. A lot of people like to sing, but it says, regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain. It's just a less cold belief system here. It's a more empathetic, more right brain, more understanding, compassionate worldview here. So what they receive, you receive, and you see it as such. That way, it's essentially the golden rule. What you want to do unto others, would you want to do unto you? Because that's what's happening here. Because whatever they get, you get. And so if you keep that in mind, it's essentially the golden rule, which is natural law. And again, just more examples you hear as well as you see basic principles of Taoism. Early Taoism was synergetic. Includes shamanism, hermit ideal. I don't know what those are. It says desire for unity with nature, which is obviously the big one. It says fascination with health, long life of breathing, meditation, and trance. And then it's like, it sounds like, I don't know what it sounds like, and then it says mystical. What does a mystic want to experience? It says life in harmony with the Tao includes experiencing the transcendent unity of all things rather than division. So which other traditions have this unified vision idea? So I don't know what that means, essentially, but I like the fact that this slide mentions health. I like the fact that it mentions long life, because that all goes alongside nature. That cannot be left out of the picture. It's like people in the health field Not talking about the government, even though clearly it's a big role in their life and it plays a toll over their health. Same thing with sports sometimes. Some people live for sports. They're like, I need to see this game. They actually take out hours of their life in order to sit and watch that game, even though they could be doing other things with their family that maybe their family wants them to do instead. You have to consider these environmental factors. It says the Tao is transcendent, the Tao is the way of ultimate reality, above, beneath, and behind everything. Sounds like nature, right? Always here, everywhere. It says it is the womb from which everything is born and where everything goes when it dies. The Tao is immanent in everything as an animating spirit, the driving power of all nature. So just an interesting perspective I wanted to share with you in case you wanted to learn more. I think it's always good to have that opinion, that perspective here. I'd say, like I say, natural law is really at the roots of a lot of this. And then starting to go along this idea of being, we are going to start with this quote, and it says, quote, "The way to do is to be," by the Lao Tzu, and this is telling you to be the change that you want to be. If you want to do something, if you want to do something big, you want to change the world, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you be the change yourself? If you want to do health, you want to do health seminars, why don't you be the example of that health seminar? Because simply by showing you have a good body or you look healthy, then people will see you, not necessarily the seminar, and say, man, I want to be like that. That already inspires me enough to want to do it. Okay, so same thing applies in health, same thing applies with this mission. If you really live to be the best person that you can be, that's the best you can do, right? What is the best you can do? Is it the best you can be? And you have to question that. So if you want to promote the idea that nature is the answer, live that life where nature's the answer. Apply it somewhere within your life before you go out talking about it with others. How do you apply it within life? I do it with foods. I do it with my mentality, right? You can say that for any scenario. You can say, it's my mentality. I believe that by seeking the nature, we can understand all things, and that nature is a universal concept, and that within nature is the truth, and that it is the best physician, it's the best teacher. These are the ideas here. So, can you understand those ideas from nature and essentially be this representation of the natural law by sharing the natural law with others and starting to be the change that you want to be? And another slide here saying the Taoism, an introduction. The Tao Te Ching means, quote, the way of life. It is a very short book in English language translation, and it's only 128 pages. It says the Tao Te Ching recommends bending to accommodate rather than breaking under the stresses of life. The book discourages learning or ambition, instead stressing that we should live according to our nature. And I would have to say, well, living according to our nature would still mean learning and ambition, as does our nature's call. You know, I mean, there's the call of nature, the messages that come from nature. Let's look at this bigger picture. Let's not jump to conclusions. This book is all about irony, as it is. So we see how much we can learn from it. It says the Tao of business success, leveraging diversities and finding the balance, because everything's about a balance, right? So you have the yin and the yang, and you see all the different traits of yin and all the different traits of yang, how they're sort of opposites of one another, however they're both necessary, however they're both present. However, given an individual point of view, we seek balance within our own lives of the two. Then you have the Tao leaders, quote, are wise as the ages, their depth cannot be sounded, yet we can describe their actions, mindful as if crossing an icy stream, focus as in the midst of danger, respectful as if an honored guest, fluid as melting ice, honest as an uncarved block of wood, open as a yielding valley, blending as if water and earth. Okay, so it often talks about leadership. It often talks about just ironies in general, and you see it here as well, because it's simply within nature and the path of nature. So one who is to be among the leaders among this path would have all these different qualities, is what it's saying. Being open, being honest, being fluid, like flexible is what I like to say. Respectful, like being in accordance to the objective morality. Being mindful, being conscious, being alert, right, of what's going on. Therefore, to then address what is necessary to be addressed, hence the word focus, to put your attention where it is due, and then attracting what you want, hence the law of attraction. Blending, so bringing things to a balance in general, so having all these different aspects makes up this greater aspect of nature. Essentially, it's just seeking nature. It's seeking the ultimate balance of nature. It's seeking to just live your nature as best, as most optimally as you can, given all the conditions. So it says here, quote from the book, it says, quote, "If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present." So living in the present, and that's something I have to ask you, especially even with you listening to this. I'm sure you have stuff to do. There's always stuff to do, right? But that's stuff to do in the future. And then you have stuff that you go to in the past, right? Because you realize that you've been thinking a certain way all this time, or you haven't really been exposed to this information before. So you're thinking before, how did you see things? And you start to see a revelation when you look at the past, and then you see the impact of the future and what would happen if we don't act upon the future that we want, and that starts with the present. So you realize that everything essentially comes down to the present moment, because you look at the past and you look at the future, and you see both as sometimes extreme, sometimes not helpful to focus or put our attention. And if it is helpful, it's still contributing to our present. Our present moment is what makes up those aspects. It's what considers those aspects. So just keep in mind how important the present really is. It's more powerful than one may think, which is why peace is more powerful than one may think, even though war, some people assume, is the answer to all things. No, war is not the answer to peace. It doesn't make sense. It innately doesn't make any sense. It's just like using violence to promote your cause. It's the same exact thing. It's like you're asking for a war. That's how most civil wars happen, by the way. Okay, so it's about being present. Oftentimes, wars, what are they for? It's for something that people want, something of desires, something that they can't live with right now and of the current moment. So just keep that in mind. What wars will people start? What wars are actually necessary? And do we even have to call it a war? When oftentimes everything is just a matter of seeking balance itself. And everything is just messages going through us, and learning is happening all the time, everywhere. You need to know that you can always learn no matter where you are or what you're trying to do. It says, quote, "Stop trying to leave and you will arrive. Stop seeking and you will see. Stop running away and you will be found." A quote by Tao as well. So it's saying to stop trying to leave. Stop trying to leave and you will arrive. Okay? Stop seeking and you will see. Stop running away and you will be found. We're going to talk still a lot more about this presence, but this is exactly what this is talking about, is presence. Do you want to arrive? That sounds like a destination, but in reality, it's a progression. It is a journey. Okay? It says stop seeking, because you will see. The truth is all around us, all the time, always here. You don't have to go on this long tangent, rant, or search for the truth, because it simply is, and it is here. So it's not that you have to seek it, rather you just have to see. It's not necessarily that you have to know how to do it, but that you simply have to be. And by the context of do, I mean, it depends on what context you're using there, but you do as you be as you do, you are the change that you want to be, right? So you simply see, and therefore, if you simply see what is present, you simply see what is true, then you simply be. But if you were seeking far from what is simply present, you might be far from who you are, far from your nature. You might be detaching yourself naturally because you are not looking at yourself. You're not pointing that finger at yourself. You're not looking at your current environment. You're looking at other external factors like we do with government. It's this external force that does not serve or have any relationship to our current environment. Part of the reason why it is so dangerous simply in the mindset of keeping us less present. Therefore, we're not living our lives as we are to live. To live is a present term. To live is to be present. It says stop running away and you will be found. A lot of people are running away. Again, government is a system built on fear. So they are running away. If you want to stop running away, it's about self-sustainability. It's about controlling yourself, gaining governance over yourself. You will be found. You know who you are. You know what to do. You know what you ought to do. This is this self-discovery process. It's a self-discovery process. It doesn't entail other people. Other people can help you find that. Okay, but you have to question, is the government helping you find yourself? Or are they helping you find a version of society? Because that's what they rely on, especially for their power and your dependence on it, is they build a system around them, their ego. Okay, so they are building a system around themselves. Meanwhile, you are not building a system around yourself, and that's why you fail to have power, and they do. And they realize what they're doing to you psychologically. They found the solution. You don't know the solution. You were kept looking for it. And that's what keeps people divided and always running in different directions toward each other, away from one another. It's just this constant confusion and distortion and distraction. So frankly, also enough complaining on behalf of myself. There's a lot of good things. Shall we want to be present? We do see that beauty within the universe that we talked about. So we can keep among the good things. We can keep talking about the positive things and actually crowd out the bad things. But we do have to identify the bad things that are in clear sight, because we don't want imbalance, and we want to be present. We want to be aware. We want to have knowledge, and with that acknowledging, and with diagnosis of disease, you diagnosis because you are through way of knowledge before you treat the disease. Okay, so that's what we're doing here, is before treating the disease that we may call the government, I call the plague, because it plagues the minds of many people. Okay, it's a belief system. Before you can treat that system, which essentially is done through ourselves, you must diagnose that. You must diagnose that the problem is in ourselves. That is the root cause of it, statism. And you know that that is the problem. And you know what statism is in its very nature. You know the nature of government and nature as a whole in general. So you're using knowledge as a way to help you discover the reasoning, the actions, the understandings, the wisdoms for the reality that you want manifested, the result of the treatment, per you say. And treating, treating. They say you can't say prevention or treating. You can't claim that you know how to do that. But we all do it within our daily lives, with cause and effect, because it's the law of nature. So, identifying the problem, finding the solution, but not being stuck in their own problem, react, solution system that they want you under. Because if you're getting down to the root cause, you're looking at them themselves and you're looking at yourself, square in the eyes, honest, real, raw, as nature intended, you are going to find the reality because you are looking at it right at it. And you're not looking around it. You're not being distracted. You're not being distorted. And this is about being present then. This self-change, this self-discovery, the change in the world is going to start with you being content, you being present. So now we're going to talk a lot about that. And you see from this photo, we have the symbol, I believe, perhaps of the Buddha, or we're going to get closer to the Buddhist understandings of this as well. And you see why there's many movements who are around New Age philosophy as much as I don't always agree with them, and they like to distort even the simple meaning of natural law, which is not good. We have to understand the good sides of this, that they're switching around and that they're changing. We're going to look at simply what it says within the practices of ancient traditions, which is Buddhism and a lot of the isms around there. Okay, but we're going to be looking at this, and we're going to see what we can learn about this in connection to nature. This quote says, "Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." There's nothing lacking because everything exists for a reason, right? Okay, you can create this or that because you feel it's out of destiny, but nothing's still lacking. You're just, again, improvising based on what has already been created. Okay, so nothing is lacking within the universe because, well, we have the truth. The truth is here. It's all around us. It simply is the blueprint of life for itself. So there's nothing that we really have to seek or go out for. We just need to have a matter of understanding, a conscious, content understanding with the world that we have here. And I think the word content is also very symbolic, like nature, because it can be either content or content, because it is what's making up the premises of the world. The content of the world is trees, people, elements, earth, all that stuff, everything. It's the all of the all, right? That's the content. And then being content with the all, it makes sense. The word content is spelled the same exact way. In just two different contexts, I think, provide a lot of insight simply as is. So it says, be content with what you have right now. Have, present word, okay? Rejoice in the way things are, present word, okay? So enjoy what is here, enjoy what is now, the truth. You embrace the truth. You don't change it to your will. You don't bend it to your will and say, this is the way it can be because we can structure all society to be this way. That's not the ideal situation. The ideal situation is accepting it and learning to live with it and optimizing your livings with it, as you are to do within nature. Okay? He says, there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Now, the whole world belongs to you is also something people can take two different ways. Whether they want to place themselves in full ego or actually, be empathetic toward others. Because the whole world doesn't belong to you. You are just among the world. Notice the irony there, okay? The whole world belongs to you, but you're also just part of the world. You can't be the one that is always thinking about yourself. Just because I say be self-sustainable, self-govern yourself, and gain control of yourself does not mean you can gain control of everybody around you by telling them that, this whole world revolves around you. This is absolutely contradictory. That's casting a shadow based on what you're telling others. I mean, this is the perfect example of the shadow, where you are projecting what you yourself is doing. So understand that the whole world contains you. And sure, it belongs to you because it wants to serve you, right? There's all these foods and stuff like that, but the whole world doesn't revolve around you alone. That's the key here. It's not you alone. You have many things with you. That's why you're never alone. So keep that in mind, that we don't want a left brain or a right brain imbalance. We want a centrist worldview based on presence in a mindset, a heart, a gut, and all that was given to you, so that way you use it to your most optimum potential. Quote, "By letting it go, it all gets done. The world is won by those who let it go. But when you try and try, the world is beyond the winning." Now this is really symbolic too, and I like this photo. They're just laying down, they're relaxing. I think the world needs more sleep. I mean, clearly, people don't have simple health potentials as we already noticed. I mean, they don't get as much sleep as they need to. They're not drinking as much water. They have all these things. This should be clear signs to many people that the world is in more danger because of just the simple fact that our health is in danger, or the simple factors of our health are in danger at the very least. So it says by letting go, it all gets done. By letting go, okay? And we said that by letting go in nature is a very ideal situation. We talked about in previous quotes. It says the world is won by those who let it go. Yes, who let it be, who don't try to be God. So this movement that I'm starting is not to reverse this condition of humanity, but to just open themselves up to what is already what is meant to be. I mean, we're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to, if anything, change ourselves in the way we see the world. The world is perfectly fine with or without us, and it will likely have its balance no matter what, which is why it's beautiful. But what we're trying to do is reduce the harm done by this turn. And by reducing the harm to the maximum, we're saving many lives. And I care about people's lives. I'm an empathetic person. I'm not a scientism elitist who thinks we can just rule over the world and change it any way we want. No, we all need to let go. But that's the thing, we all need to let go. But when you have these few people in power who choose to always change the world in whatever direction they choose, and show people that they need to do this or do that and pull themselves this way, pull themselves that way, and they're always feeling pulled on, which is why they're always so stressed and always so worked out, it's because they're not letting go to themselves. They're not letting go to nature. They're not laying out in the sun like these folks are always. When's the only time they get to lay down? Maybe for a couple hours a night, of which they can't even sleep anyways, and then they have to go back and do the same old schedule every single day. And I know this can be very harsh for certain people. I understand that. But if it's saying the world is won by those who let it go, it's like, do you take enough breaks? Do you take time to relax and center yourself? Like, what does that mean, when you relax? That you are more in alignment with yourself. Why is that? Why is it that when you go on a break and you give yourself more time, that you find yourself and you have more direction in life? It's only because, well, you're becoming more present, and you're becoming who you ought to be through recognizing what is being, and recognizing that you have control over your being, especially when you slow down and actually take a step back for once from all that's going on. There's always so much that's going on in this world, okay? But it says when you try, the world is beyond the winning. You can push yourself, and I encourage nobody gives up or anything upon their efforts here for this movement, but don't try to an extent that's outside of human boundaries. Don't try to an extent that's outside of nature, because there still is a level of health that you have to maintain for yourself. There's still a level of competence and contentness that you have to maintain for yourself. You need to put that stuff first. As much egoic as it sounds, there needs to be a balance between what you're putting out there and what you also are receiving yourself. And you need to receive this sunlight. You need to receive that warmth, that relaxation. It's not about winning. It's not about saying, okay, I'm the victor here, now I get to choose all the rules, because that's what governments have been doing. And when people want to change the governments, that's what happens. It's not about winning. It's about simply living as we ought to be the happiest that we ought to be the healthiest. That's not in winning. You don't become happy and healthy by winning. You become happy and healthy by living content and living your purpose, living your duty, and working in alignment with the forces that be. Not the powers that be, but the actual infinite powers that be. The natural powers that be. Not the fake powers that be. They're the very opposite. So, it only makes sense that when they want you to try toward things that aren't even benefiting you, and then you try to something that you think will benefit you, you're still deceived in the fact that you're not looking at yourself, and you're not realizing this bigger truth to the world, that you need to a great extent let go. And that if everybody did that, if everybody did it at the same time, the world would be a simpler place, because we wouldn't be so needing to change everything out of our own security, out of our own grievances and grievances, both. Grievances is probably not a word, but you get it. Greed, over wanting money, over wanting this, over wanting that, technology, has us believing in this winning system, for all the games are formed around winning this, winning that, ending the max level, hitting this certain point, and then being able to do that. So we're very calculative, and it trains our brains to do that. So it's not that that's bad. It teaches us a way of learning for sure, and could actually help us become more analytical in different regards. So hopefully you're analyzing these words as well and what I'm trying to convey. But the point is here is the premises. So regardless of if you're analyzing this or not, you can still understand the premises that, yeah, nature is the answer. And with it being the answer, that answer is already simply present. And if that's innately true as this answer to this world, is there really need to then ask the question? We can ask the question and then we can understand that, yeah, that's the answer. But it's the action that it's talking about here. When you try, when you are going up and beyond your means and you're not letting it go, you have this desire that starts to take hold of yourself. We talked about desire. What did we say about desire? We said desire can take control of you. We saw that belief can take control of you, right? The belief that by having to do this, this is what we need. And the movement is certainly still obviously rooted in some sort of belief. It's still rooted in some sort of action to partake. But the actions that we partake, and the reason why I'm releasing this, is because it will hold ourselves accountable. The fact that we cannot try to bend the will of nature, and that we do have limits to what we should and should not do, shall we want to understand the greater knowledge of the universe. So that we should not go beyond our limits, because we do have limits. And although we live in this infinite world that we can perceive, and it's beautiful when we do, we see all this potential, there's the irony to that, which is that we should not want to do anything. We should just want to sit back. We should be happy and healthy. And if we're healthy, what is it more than we need? We just want to be healthy. We just want to live on, right? If we have everything that we want in this world, what is it more that we need? There needs to be a level of contentness that is here, a level of presence that is found. So let's go on with this. It says, quote, "The essence of Taoism is really expressed by these few words. Taoism is the way of the child, the way of the fool, the way of someone who doesn't need to be noticed." And this is a quote by Frederick Lenz. Yeah, you don't see necessarily leaders of promoting Taoism, because if they did, like we notice, they don't promote natural law, because it would certainly disintegrate naturally their power systems that be. Their power systems that be would not nearly be the same in its very nature with the people promoting it, with statism and other belief systems like that, which is all basically around statism. It wouldn't be that way if people realized what Tao is and what natural law is and what it really is speaking about the is, because it's speaking on behalf of truth, right? The way of the child, the way of the fool, the way of someone who doesn't need to be noticed. So the way of imagination, the way of creativity, the way of the fool, the one that's looked at as the fool because they're thinking different, or the way of someone who doesn't need to be noticed because they don't want to rule over their fellow men. They don't want all the public attention. They don't want to be the one being attacked on the public stage. I don't want to be the one attacked on the public stage. And even more of a reason for me to say that this movement's about all of us, not just about me. But I'm willing to take attacks, heck, because it will put us in the right direction of understanding these truths, that we shouldn't want to feel noticed. Because if we want to feel noticed, then something is out of balance in our lives. It's because we're not receiving the natural attention that we should be receiving. And now we're seeking it in others, and now we're ruling over their lives because of it. We're using others as a coping mechanism for ourselves. We have to realize this reflection of self onto others, which is what created this system, which is what keeps this system in its going, in its forever motion. This statism that controls many people's mentalities, and they believe that it is oh so necessary. Okay, so it's something that we can notice that, and we can notice the problems of the world, and again, make that diagnosis for the treatment. But us ourselves, do we need to be noticed? Well, when in a world where it's centered around few people, all the many of us can bring to notice the truths that are present for all of us, the same people who want to live a happy and healthy life. We're not asking for new people to be in power over the many people. See, that's just so counterintuitive and contradictive. But to instead change ourselves and to notice our tendencies, to notice our belief systems, to notice. And if you don't think any of this is possible, it is possible with the simple nature is the answer, and then other people holding each other accountable, as long as statism is not existent. Because as long as statism is non existent, there's the greater obligation of people being self-sustainable and having to defend themselves and having to build communities. This natural accountability mechanism is put naturally into place. This wisdom is naturally sought out. This creativity naturally proves people's destinies. I mean, this is the beauty of it, that people don't always realize it's there, but it is. It is there. Once you take out these systems, you're taking out belief systems that are controlling the system. And that belief system, once you realize the danger of it and why, which is the big question, then you really see how we can achieve anything we want in this world, because it's the natural law. It's the law of attraction. It's what they want kept away from you. And that's what I'm trying to get you to notice. I don't want to be noticed. I want you to notice that. I want you to notice nature. Not me, nature. Taoism is the way of nature. To be a leader of Taoism, you're the leader of the way of nature. You should be promoting the way of nature. To be a physician, you're treating through nature, as hypocrisy says. So you're just a guide for nature. You're not a leader of nature. There's no such thing. That would be God. That would be this consciousness that is overruling it, right? But nature itself is something that we ought to guide as human beings. Shall we want to achieve the world that we want to achieve, given all this philosophy and wisdom about it? So perhaps may you see it that way, then that is the way, because it's our mindsets setting that way, paving that way, for us to look down that way. And we don't need to be noticed by that. We don't need to be noticed. With the simple truths present, the simple truths being embraced by every individual, you don't need certain people on the public stage. Certain people could be on the public stage simply because they create more impact around this guidance. Great. That's great. But they should always encourage others to do the same. They should encourage others to notice the same things that they're noticing and not to notice them themselves. Because this is not about ego. This is not about the individual person only as the individual, but it's about the individual person within this collective nature that we all live in. This individual within the many individuals. All the individuals, all together, under what? With what? All throughout with what? And so, let's talk about beliefs then. It says, wrong for people to fight. So this is the beliefs of the Tao. And you may agree with this simply on the premises of negative expression, positive expression, natural law is what we've been talking about this whole time. Wrong for people to fight, it says. Wrong for government to make rules and laws. Okay, then it says, against any kind of rules, diets, etc. Notice diets is a word there, and that's so big because anybody now in the health field is realizing how much of a scam diets are. How they're not universal, how they're not eternal, how they're restrictive. The same exact thing applies to diets as it does laws, and that's what makes people always looking for a new diet, like they're looking for a new government, new laws, new ruling body over their lives, because it's easy to have that sense of security, have it all given to them, so they don't have to decide for themselves or experiment for themselves or become self-sustainable and find the right diet for themselves. Okay, so the truth is, and you'll see this through a lot of my works too, is that dieting is a scam. Dieting doesn't work, frankly. It doesn't work. You can say that it works, okay, diet works, but it doesn't work entirely. And that's the problem. It's not universal, it's not of nature. It's something we made, and its very meaning, it means restriction. And the same thing goes here with these rules and these boundaries of laws that we've created as man's law. And we have to distinguish man's law from natural law, because the laws are supposed to, innately by the word law, is supposed to be something that is within the universe, something that is innate and here and to obey and follow. So when we say man's law, it's like we're presuming, okay, we must follow man. But if we're saying natural law, we're presuming we must follow nature. So it makes sense to say that nature is the answer. And the other way around would be man is the nature, and is humans the answer? So are you saying to every disease on earth and to everything that has ever been existing, even though we've been healing with medicine, natural medicine, for thousands of years, that man is the answer to everything? No. I would say certainly not. Man has been his own demise. And it's because he refuses to understand and recognize nature that is beside him all this time. And with a greater perspective of understanding that it is the answer, and looking at all the different ways you may understand that it is, then you may see that human beings can be far more than what they want to be, even just putting themselves as the answer. And they can still have all this great potential, but they realize that there's problems that can arise, because if they choose to rule over other human beings, there's problems. And if they change all of society, denature it, then okay, they can eliminate those problems, and that's what they've been doing. It's by denaturing all of society, they can have less karma on behalf of themselves, because all of society is changed in their role, in their direction. And I assure that most politicians that hear this, or even come to understand natural law, they still won't get it, because they've been trained into their certain way of thinking. And it can be hard for certain individuals to just grasp upon simple ways of thinking, such as this. Okay, look, the Tao had theories regarding the body, diet, breathing, and physical exercises, but it uses of herbs and philosophical injury, self-reflection, and meditation. The things that we ought to do, that we've been doing for thousands of ages because they work. And then you see these governments like cracking down on that and banning people, killing people for doing that, when it could actually be super healing for them. Why don't you let people decide for themselves anyways? Right? I mean, this is just funny how the government goes against its own people. And then you have to question, okay, well then is the government really about its people if they're willing to go against their own people because they speak out about this or they do that? Then governments are certainly far from the people, and they are, because they are often the most denatured themselves. So understand that diets are very similar to man's law. Okay, and so it's wrong for man to make the rules and laws. It only makes sense. Why would another human being make all the laws and rules for another human being that barely knows them? I mean, it's like the same thing goes with this relationships. I talk about relationships sometimes because it's really important that people understand simple things like consciousness, understanding all the environments that exist. It plays a very big role in relationships, you being with another person. A lot of people jumping into relationships, they're not aware of the current environments. They're not being friends with this person before getting involved with a major relationship. So without going super in depth with this, you just see that this lack of understanding of different environments is exactly what's creating this blind belief and getting hurt in time, getting hurt by experience, not learning from awareness, not being willing to even learn from awareness because they're so suckered into it, and they don't see any girls, they don't see any people, so they just jump into relationships. It's the only one they can grasp. They feel like it's fate. They can follow fate, and they follow fate initially, but then they jump in with putting a title saying girlfriend, boyfriend, and then because society puts it on them, they feel like it's just, and meanwhile it is absolutely not in their favor. You know, they jump in to an extent with fate, and then all of a sudden they jump in interjecting with human rule, and it starts to crumble down because it wasn't the natural way it was supposed to go down. Now, there's a lot of different ways to interpret that, of course, but I'm saying that there's a consciousness of different environments that often doesn't exist. And when consciousness breaks up every relationship to an extent, given you look at that perspective. Okay, but then it says the Taoist feels these ideas bring a human being, so these ideas of breathing, physical exercises, herbs, and all that, brings a human being into closer alignment with, quote, the natural order of life and living. So just to discern that the natural law is not the natural order, but just understand that the learnings from nature in general are something that can be very helpful for all regards. See, and I actually encourage that people don't protest, because that's not going to change anything. It's just asking for government to change, when in reality we need to change ourselves. This is the root cause to the problem, okay? So, like, ultimately, I have here in my notes, like, this is what I essentially want people to have. I want people to have faith. I want them to seek their positive expression. I want them to seek their inner imaginative, fun child at heart. Because when they realize this child at heart, if they can see that, that too is really powerful. Now, do I expect everybody to see this and need to know? Like I said, there's simple things that will naturally bring us to these mentalities. Things that will change the world naturally without any super big interjection or putting this on display for everybody to see. It's about just bringing these ideas to people, having conversations, and if you can open up more conversations and you open up people to one another, this stuff naturally comes about. When you open up nature to do its thing and to allow karma more in its motion, then this stuff will naturally still come about. I mean, it's like trial and error too. You know, there's an extent to which you need to do that. You need to have some downfalls to rise up. You know, there's a reason why the word self-govern exists. Because if government stands for mind control, who are you referring to as the government? Are you referring to somebody other than you? Because if you are, then you're not in control of yourself. Because it's mind control. So are you in control of your own mind? That's what this comes down to. Who's in control of your consciousness? Society, in the case of relationships, this greater desire that's ruling over your life, or consciousness, yourself, being aware of the environment that you're living in. Did you address all the different factors? Did you address environmentally and mutually what you would do before you took action and put this label on it and went on with this proceeding? So just question that when we move on here. And this brings us back to the idea of this progression, okay? It says here on this photo, it says you don't always need a plan. Sometimes you just need to breathe, trust, let go, and see what happens. So I say, okay, we have this big blueprint, right, for humanity. And you say, okay, well, that sounds cool perhaps, or, okay, I want to learn more about it, but why do we have a blueprint? Like, isn't that still something we want to structure society? No, it's just a blueprint to see society, a blueprint to change the way things are now into transitioning to a more natural world. Into transitioning to a more natural world, the world that is meant to be. It's not necessarily that we need a plan, but we need to understand that transition. What's going to get us there naturally, actually, if we want to be with nature? So a natural transition to nature. That would be the only way that makes sense. So we have to understand that you need to use nature to get nature. And by doing that, you breathe, you trust, you let go, and you see what happens. All of those things that we talked about. We talked about being present. We talked about trust and essentially moral regards, okay? And being conscious of the different environments. If you're conscious of why people come to be who they are, you can understand them. You can let go of the current life you live into this reality of nature if you find ways to do that. Okay, it's always about structuring your own life to do this, and see what happens. See what happens. There's an extent to where we can sit back. We can really just sit back and watch things in its motion because we naturally set the stage for it to occur. By naturally representing with this message, and by naturally bringing this idea that nature is the answer to the public, and we start realizing what that means. It was naturally, let's say, natural law is already manifesting within this reality. Many people know what it is, and they're able to recognize it and acknowledge it. That will naturally set in this greater conscious collective of people who realize that there's no real role of the government, and that, frankly, we just need to live in according with these laws. If we understand these laws, which most of us already do to an extent, we've just been suppressed from seeing them, then we can also apply them within our own lives and attract what we want, which allows us to be happy in order to also breathe, trust, and let go, which allows us to also be happy. So it's a cycle where you have to be to do. Okay, it's not that you need a plan, you just have to do as you ought to do. So the plan lives in you. If you are the one to change, the plan lives with you. You have to plan out your own life. We don't need a plan for this greater collective. We just have a simple blueprint sheet, this simple video that helps you see the world in a different perspective. But the plan comes from you. right? What do you plan on doing about this? What do you plan on doing if you're in a position of power to help encourage others to see the truths that are present? You can get a plan for that, right? But you need to realize that if you simply just be human and you show them that humanity and you show them what is nature that is innately within themselves, like I am showing you here how you have these abilities within yourself, then you don't need a plan. You can just go based on it. We know from the previous quotes that if you understand something, you don't have to remember anything because you have it innately with you. You have this ability to reason. You have this ability to display this information in regards of a human context, not needing this super like, okay, let me present you with a charter and I need you to read this charter and then sign your signature at the end, and therefore we are signed up for this initiation. Like, this is ridiculous. This is not going to create the change that you want within the world, especially in a natural world. For it even says in the Tao, it says, knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength, but mastering yourself is true power. So there's worth in both. There's worth in both for sure. But knowing yourself is going to be the key to this, because what you're going to talk to other people, like, you can know other people, but you still have to talk to them, right? So you can know perhaps what their response is, their environments and so forth, but you still need to find a way to convey to them, to talk to them, to build a relationship with them, to work with them. And by doing that, you need to obviously to some extent understand yourself. Like, if you were a child, you wouldn't just walk up to somebody unconsciously and do something because they could get mad at you. You know that they could get mad at you because if you act a certain way, but only if you act a certain way. So you know what would happen if you did something in a certain circumstance. It's knowing yourself before going out and knowing others. Again, it's like focusing home rather than on Mars or some other planet. It's because we have answers right here, right now, that we have to focus on if we want to move on with this world that we have here. It's thinking before doing. So in all regards, in all contexts, that makes sense there. Knowing yourself is going to be key, because it is essentially, if you're going to distribute consciousness, you should probably have some consciousness within yourself. If you're going to speak of a message, you hopefully have some wisdom behind your own actions first. You are walking the talk yourself. Again, representing the truth that you stand for. So that is a process of self that is not going to be found simply in others. So don't rely on others completely either. Okay, find this balance between you and others and realize that you have a very big impact on those others as well. So you need to fix yourself and realize who yourself is, shall you want to convey yourself to others. And if you know yourself better than other people may know themselves, then you're gonna shine like a beaming light, perhaps, onto these other people's lives. They're gonna wonder, well, how did you do it? And they might have some trouble with knowing themselves, and they might need some of your help. And that's sort of, what a coach is also supposed to do. Is having more knowledge of themselves, they can then help others gain more knowledge about themselves, and they also learn in the same process. This is a process in which, as long as we're listening to each other, we're actively listening and asking questions, then we can come up with all the answers because we have the answers. It's like saying, well, do you know how to eat healthy? Most people generally do know how to eat healthy. The answers are already here. They know that they should eat vegetables. They know they should drink more water. They know they need more sleep. They know they have certain things their body is telling them. And so all they have to do is listen to it. And that's it. And then listening is a practice of being present. So it all makes sense, right? If you are to listen, you are to be present. Because if you're not listening, you are somewhere else. Your mind is not here. Your mind is not right now. It's not receiving what somebody's telling them right there and then. It's like they're blocking it out completely because they have something else on their mind. Something else. Something that isn't necessarily the message of the universe. It's like receiving a vibration on your phone rather than the vibrations that are naturally in your body, the vibrations that are naturally all throughout your cells and everything in nature. We are able to imitate so much that people are able to even imitate themselves and who they truly are. So realize that, and realize the rejection, and realize that people will go out there saying things without knowing themselves, and that is something that we have to hold each other accountable for. This accountability is necessary to this earth, so just simply by talking with one another, being open to talking with one another, actively listening and asking questions to one another, that is naturally put into effect. And then what a surprise! We have power because we're using our human nature. We're using our nature. We're listening to nature. What a surprise, right? Well, that's the whole point of natural law, right? Is to show you this innate willpower that you have, this innate power of the universe. Given you work in alignment with it, you're going to receive what you attract. Okay, so, quote, for Taoism concerns itself with unconventional knowledge. Knowledge, then, is also that is not promoted by the mainstream, not promoted by the government. And then it says, with the understanding of life directly, instead of in the abstract, linear terms of representational thinking. Okay? Thinking. So, instead of abstract linear terms of representational thinking, we are understanding life directly. We're getting right to the source, first person, root cause, not around it, right to the point, down to earth. Essentially, in all degrees, literally, that's what we're doing. Understanding of life, going right down to earth. And this is a quote by Alan Watts, by the way. Okay, and what it's saying, unconventional knowledge, for sure, because not many people are talking about this, clearly. But the understanding of life directly. That doesn't mean it comes through other people. It doesn't mean it comes through me either. I want you to listen for yourself. I want you to see for yourself, discover for yourself. I want me, if anything, to inspire you to do that on your own. I don't want to tell you anything. I don't want you to believe anything, right? Previous quotes told you that too. It's about getting people to think. Okay, not necessarily me telling them anything. It's just that I want you to think. I want you to use your human power. That's it. That's all I care about. I don't even care about having you know this or that. I just want you to use your human power. Because statism naturally takes that power away from you, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call out for what it is. It's naturally taking that power away from you. So if I want you to think, I'm going to say, okay, well, we have to get rid of that out of your brain. And if you come to the same conclusion, which I know you will if you do the investigations for yourself, then great. Because now we're on the same terms. But we're still unique individuals. We're still living our own lives as we ought to do within nature. And we can still help one another, hold each other accountable, because the beauty of it, every person having their own unique life is that we can greater hold each other more accountable, because we all live in different conditions that allow us to then better understand all the different conditions. Wow, what a surprise. Other people helping other people, that's what we're designed to do in this world, folks. Okay, so just understand that the Tao, this way of nature, is unconventional knowledge, but it's knowledge that is here, is knowledge to know, because it is of life directly. And it's not based in this abstract linear terms of representational thinking. So sure, we're representing an idea called nature is the answer, but the premises behind the idea is what matters. The knowledge behind that idea is what matters. The understanding of that idea is what matters. The understanding that this idea as a representation can only go so far, because it's only step one. Because the rest of the steps is about, well, understanding life, understanding that a flag doesn't really mean anything. It's just a bridge out of materialism to hopefully keep ourselves accountable. And the flag could be a sign that then represents more of this understanding than as a whole. Okay, so a material thing that helps us understand the spiritual side of materials. How we can associate certain materials with certain things, how we can attach ourselves to certain materials, but how ironic it is that we can put on material a symbol of a sun, a symbol of a tree, how we can imitate life through technology, through printing, through imagery, okay? And it seems realistic, or it seems like something we can comprehend as if it is of the natural world. So the Nita flag represents many things, and it can be used through step 6 because it allows us to be reminded. It holds ourselves accountable to the extent that other people may not always be able to hold ourselves accountable as well, but other people always too hold each other accountable. It's what we're supposed to do in nature. So this idea This flag is a bridge. It's a connecting point, and as is a health coach, a bridge between your doctor and yourself, but more essentially, yourself and nature. So understand that everything just goes by nature, and that's why it is the answer. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe, like, and do whatever you wish. It's up to you. You are free in this life, and if you want to know how to change the world truly, please, I encourage you to check out my website, Nita.1. It's here for all of us, actually. It's not my website. It is my website, but it isn't. It's here for us all. We're all messengers. We're all fellow human beings. Let's change the world truly, and we can do it with Nita.1. Nature's the answer.